Jack climbed slowly but resolutely up the tree. He climbed up for a long while, along its thick vines, about the distance he would walk to his day's work, he reckoned. He stopped to rest his arms a bit and adjust the load on his back to a more comfortable position. He looked down but could not make out his house. He wasn't sure whether this was because it was dark or because of the distance. Perhaps a little bit of both, he thought. He took a drink of water from his flask and began climbing again. He climbed until it was about the time he would ordinarily be arriving at his day's work. It was a good idea that he had left much earlier than his usual time to go to his day's work, he thought. The distance so far was more than twice as long. He was pretty tired by this time, and he was having difficulty breathing freely. He thought he might go back, but felt defeated at the thought. Just then, something scampered past him up the tree and disappeared. It happened so quickly, he did not have time to react or make out what manner of creature it was. Then, presently, another sound caught his attention. He was more alert this time and caught hold of one of the creature's legs. The creature shrieked and tried to shake Jack off, but he held on even more tightly. It was almost dawn, and Jack was too desperate to be afraid. To Jack's amazement, they were suddenly transported into another land. Jack quickly let go of the creature. The creature turned and looked at Jack. He instinctively reached for his axe, but the creature stood its ground, gave Jack a long, searching look before scampering away. Jack stood for a moment to think and take in his surroundings. The night air was still but heavy. It was too dark to make out what the place really looked like, but it seemed to him he was in a small clearing of a forest. Presently, he noticed a path in the opposite direction of where the creature took off, and he decided to see where it led him. As Jack turned down the path, other creatures came up from the tree and ran off in the same direction as the previous creature. Meanwhile, in Sven, sleep was fitful for many. Many dreamed strange dreams with strange creatures. Men walking to their day's work imagined they saw the strange creatures from their dreams lurking in the bushes. Many men reached for their knives in case it was a wild beast that had come over from a neighboring land. As they repeated, tenacities revealed under stressful times while standing their ground. You see, this was the motto of the land of Sven, which was often repeated in times of battles and other equally challenging times. Upon hearing this, the creatures seemed to melt away. The men would then laugh and rub their eyes, thinking it had just been their imagination. It was all this business of that giant bean tree that was causing everyone to imagine things and be on edge. As Jack continued further down the path, he noticed that it began to give off a low red glow, which made it easier to follow in the dark. Jack walked with a sense of purpose, propelled by the desire to get back before his fellow Zvenians began noticing the tree's reappearance. His family had not yet received a summons to appear before the king, and Jack did not want things to get worse before they did, especially not in his absence. He quickened his pace until he was practically running along the path. It was right at that moment that he had another one of those strange sensations. He felt as if the forest around him was moving or following him. He didn't quite know which, and had quickened its pace in step with his. He looked around him in the dark night's forest, but saw nothing amiss. He broke into a sprint. The sensation remained. The forest seemed to have silently sped up along with him. He knew by now that dismissing such things could have startling results. Jack slowed down and focused his senses on isolating the source of the moving sensation. His dad had taught him how to be aware of his surroundings and train his hearing to detect the direction of sounds. He listened on either side, then he noticed it. He found the discovery startling and wondered what it could mean. There were no sounds in the night air. It was as if the sound was sucked out of the atmosphere, leaving a void. Still, the feeling remained, so he concentrated his mental focus on isolating the direction of the moving feeling, which was difficult as it seemed to be all around him. Still, he persisted. alternating between the left and right sides of the forest wall around him. After a little while, he noticed the feeling was unbalanced on the right just above him. He resisted the urge to look up. He looked off instead to his left, where the sense of something seemed strongest in that direction, then off, beyond and back. He saw or heard nothing, but as he continued to let his senses do the detecting, he sensed the presence of something lower to the ground. An animal, perhaps. He thought about the quickest way to reach for his axe. It was quickest to reach for his knife with his right hand. He shifted his carrying belt that held what he was carrying in place so that his axe was easier to get at. He quickened his pace again. Better to get to the end of the path, or somewhere that was in the open so he could see his assailants, if it came to that, he thought. He presently came to a fork in the path, where one path veered off to the left and the other to the right from the path he was on. He decided to continue following the path straight ahead. He couldn't see beyond where he was down the right path anyway. While the clearing on the left path seemed clearer and wider, it was better, he thought, to stick with the red glow. He felt tempted again to look up to see what was there, but he resisted. They were being surreptitious for a reason, and he didn't want to bring things to a head unnecessarily. He quickened his pace again. He needed to make up for lost time. After traveling for some time, he began to notice a difference in the air. The air had become less heavy. He paused, took his axe in his hand, and began to run full speed ahead. Not long after, he noticed that his travel companions had pulled back. He gripped his axe tightly and kept going. Suddenly, he ran smack dab into blinding daylight, leaving the forest behind. He stumbled, then came to a stop to shield his eyes from the glare of sunlight. It took a few minutes for his eyes to adjust to seeing his surroundings. His ears, however, heard the rustling of the wind. He seemed to be in a vast meadow, but couldn't make out what was in the distance. He looked back, and to his amazement, it was as if a huge night wall sliced the meadow along its border with the forest. He looked up. The darkness went all the way up. With no path in sight, he was unsure of what direction to take. He wagered his travel companions were not interested in coming out into the light. He wondered why they only followed him. Still, he was glad that was all they did. He took a drink of water as he contemplated what to do next. Straight ahead had worked out so far. He would keep straight ahead, he thought. Meanwhile, his companions had sped back at lightning speed to report the whereabouts of the Earthling. Jack continued straight ahead for some time. He felt the wind on his face and heard the sound of critters in the grass. What welcoming sounds, he thought. The wind on his face was a welcome change from the still, heavy air of the forest. His thoughts went to his parents, and he quickened his pace. The meadows ahead gave way to beautiful flowers, trees, and foliage unlike anything he had seen in Sven. Well, Jack thought, practically everything I have seen or experienced so far is unlike anything in Sven. But this is quite pleasant. He quickened his pace to get closer to see and smell the new colors and fragrances. Presently, some distance away, a road that led to a large city emerged into view. Nothing in Sven prepared him for this. Its expanse went as far as his eyes could see to the left and right. It also went upward as far as his eyes could see. It was majestic in appearance, with a brilliant quality, and seemed to beckon him to come. He began to feel intimidated, but pressed on nevertheless. The sight of the city seemed to pale in comparison to the beautiful vistas he was surrounded by. Jack quickened his pace. He needed to get on that path. Time is of the essence, he reminded himself. He had been gone a long time, and things were probably already getting out of hand in Sven, he thought. Just then, a sound caught his attention that wasn't there before. He whirled around sharply in its direction. "Oh, hi there, young man," a wizened old man called out to him, smiling as if he had just caught sight of a long-lost friend. Where did you come from?" stuttered Jack, startled at not having heard or noticed his approach. It seemed incredulous that someone could come from any direction on such an open plain without him having seen them approaching for some time from a distance. "Oh, I am a guide and sentry from yonder glorious city. I have been a guide here from the day of the cedars. I sometimes fall asleep while waiting for passers-by." "So you come from the city?" Jack looked at the city and looked at the old man incredulously. He imagined everyone from the city of a majestic and glorious appearance matching the city. "Oh, that city?" said the old man with a hint of contempt. "No, I speak of the glorious city beyond yonder forest." Jack had heard enough and certainly could not spare the time. He had a mission to accomplish after all, so he turned to leave. "The city you see over there is not what it seems," he said. "That's why my job is so important." Jack looked at the city, but continued to walk in its direction. "I wouldn't, if I were you. There are giants there," added the old man quickly. Jack paused. "Yes, giants," he said with emphasis. "It is the city of giants, and they like nothing better than luring earthlings to their city to make the king's favorite meal, earthling stew. I bet you the king has already smelled you and has already gave his chant. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an earthling man. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I will grind earthling bones this night for supper." Jack's eyes widened. The city did indeed look like it belonged to giants. "Why have you come, earthling?" the old man asked. "Perhaps I can help you find your path back home, or help you find what you seek before it is too late. No doubt a search party has been ordered already to come in search of you," he added. Jack looked at the forest and wondered whether it wasn't better to take his chances with the giants. The old man fell silent, watching Jack contemplating what to do. Presently he said, "The glorious king of yonder glorious city beyond the forest's veil is known for his vast knowledge. Perhaps there is a matter or question that needs knowledge you do not yet possess?" Jack looked back at the city. He did not see anyone coming, but thought about why he had come. "Who is this king you speak of? Why would he give such an old man this job?" Jack asked disbelievingly. The old man seemed to reflect, then said quietly, "I volunteered to come to the meadow beyond the forest's veil, as my heart goes out for unsuspecting visitors lured into their trap," he said with a motion of his head towards the city. "The glorious king doesn't see much value in it, or why I would volunteer," he said in a non-committal voice. Still, he didn't see any harm either, so he gave me his consent. With that, Jack turned his back on the city and began walking towards the forest. He reasoned no harm had come to him on his journey in. Jack stopped abruptly in his tracks. "There are wild beasts in the forest that stalked me on my way here," he said to the old man. "Oh, the beasts of the forest? They are quite harmless. If you were stalked, it was perhaps sentries of the city of giants posted there to make sure earthlings come straight here without anyone who may happen upon them warning them about what awaits them here," answered the old man. Jack continued walking slowly towards the forest, still turning things over in his mind as he remembered the eerie feeling of being followed. His attention returned to the present as the old man said, "I will wake my donkey up to carry us more quickly." He made a clicking sound, and a donkey rose up from a tall patch of grass. "I am old, and I am afraid I would slow you down. I don't know whether you are in a hurry?" His voice trailed off inquiringly. "I am," said Jack. "Oh? Well, it is a good thing I have my trusty steed. It's just as well, too, as I expect that sentries from the city will be upon us any minute now. You're welcome to ride with me on my donkey. It will get us there more quickly," said the old man. Jack walked toward the donkey. It was a strong-looking donkey. Jack held onto the donkey to mount it, but no sooner had he laid his hand on the donkey than they were instantly transported to the edge of the forest before he had an opportunity to get on. Jack, feeling somewhat alarmed, attempted to disentangle himself from the donkey, but before he could, the old man gave him a sharp shove into the forest. Jack stumbled headfirst into the dark forest. Just before his outstretched hands hit the ground, out of the corners of his eyes, Jack saw the form of a large beast step through the forest veil behind him. He tried to get up from where he had fallen, but could not. He willed his hands to move, to grab his axe or knife, but his body would not respond to any of the messages his brain was sending him. He tried desperately to speak, but nothing came. His lips and tongue also refused to cooperate. He trembled within, but outwardly his body remained still. Jack felt the presence of the old man-turned-beast come closer. Fear struck his heart as he felt himself being grasped. He tried to move to put up a fight, but to no avail. He was under the dragon's spell. Immediately, they were transported to a vast room with a large seat at its center. As he lay there on the floor of this room, he saw the beast, tall and fearsome, standing twice the height of a full-grown Zavenian, with the body and tail of a dragon, the head and paws of a lion, and big fiery eyes. Jack felt helpless as he lay there. He thought of his parents and how he was letting them down. A tear trickled down his face. If he was going to die, he would die thinking of his parents' faces. The dragon walked toward the large seat and sat down, and as if from nowhere, strange and hideous creatures appeared before the dragon, bowing before him, saying, "O Devourer, Prince of the Dark Realm, who deceives, devours, and destroys, like you." The dragon bared its teeth, appearing to smile. "Darfus? Where is Darfus?" "Here, my liege," a beast answered, appearing from the shadows. "Bone Collector, take the earthling and prepare him for the next sacrifice," the dragon said to Darfus. "And the axe, my liege?" Darfus said inquiringly. "Leave it there. I will deal with it personally," said the dragon. Bone Collector summoned a large spear with 3 fiery red prongs. As he raised it in the air as if to pierce Jack's body with it, an image flashed in a split second before Jack's mind's eye of his dad telling him one morning, on their way to their day's work together, "Son, the Svenian way in battle or great times of distress is to prepare one's mind and heart while repeating the words, 'Tenacities revealed under stressful times.'" Jack gathered all the courage he could muster and blurted out the words with everything within him as the spear descended. His words came out as garbled grunts. The dragon jerked forward suddenly, as if struck, and let out a loud roar, breathing fire as he roared. Jack squeezed his eyes shut to block out the sight of his demise, but the dragon's roar had stopped short, and the spear had not descended. When Jack finally dared to open his eyes, he found himself lying in a bed in a strange room.